This is a video I'm making to illustrate the effects of how variability, specifically in arrival processes, can create queues waiting. So let me describe what we're seeing here. We got a simple process. Looking over here, we treat this as input. We have these green widgets coming in. And over here, we can think of this right blue arm as a server. That's whose job is to take a green widget from the left and put it to the right. Okay. Now, what is in this box for the moment is not important. Let us focus on the path that the widgets take to go from the input arm all the way to the output arm. And we see basically that the path is a straight line, right? So all widgets have to travel the same distance to get to the output arm, meaning that there is no variability in arrivals. So if we look at the spacing between the widgets on the right hand side and the spacing with which they come in, they're the same spacings. Now in a setting with no variability in arrivals or services, if there's enough capacity on the right hand side, and there is in this case, we will not see a queue build up at all. Now let's see what happens as we increase variability in the system. And to do this, I'm going to go into my magic variability box. And we'll see that this box has three possible paths. The middle path, which is currently being taken, has no variability. The top path has a splitter. And the splitter acts by splitting the input it takes 50-50. Some go to the left and 50% go to the right. Let's see what happens when I tweak the path of my input now through the top. So notice there's nothing going in through the middle. Anything coming into the splitter is being split 50-50. And some inventory has a slightly longer path demonstrated by the solder loop. Some inventory has a slightly shorter path. And the thing to notice is, so the total distance traveled by each widget depends on the path it takes. And the thing to notice is we've now created variability in the output of this magical variability box because we've got two widgets coming out almost simultaneously. And notice what this is doing to the arm or this resource on the right hand side. So before, there was no queue buildup whatsoever. Now, since things are effectively coming in batches of two, while the arm is serving the first item, the second item sits there for a split second, not very long, but sits there for a split second, and this is buildup of waiting time, basically. Okay, now to demonstrate the effect of variability even more, let me now switch to the bottom path, and you'll see the bottom path is a lot more complicated. Basically, we've got a lot more splits going on. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 splits, which means that there are 2 to the power 4, so that's 16, or counting wrong probably, doesn't matter. We have a lot more possible paths for the input, so let me adjust my path. And now what that's going to mean? That's going to mean that the output of this variability box is going to be a lot more variable. So we'll let the system warm up and reach steady state. For the moment, we'll ignore what's going on here. And once the first item leaves this box, okay, now it looks good. Now notice that the output on the right-hand side is a lot more variable than it even was with the top path. So with the top path, we had pretty much batches of 2 coming out, but here we got 1, 3, 1, 1, 2. So this weird pattern to the output from the variability box. And notice what happens in my resource or output arm. A lot of the time now there will be an item in front of it, right? So this represents more waiting on average, say, than the top path with less variability. Okay. So what's the take-home message? The final thing to notice is that no matter what happens in this variability box, it doesn't affect the throughput rate, because the variability box, right, just says some widgets take longer, some widgets take less, but the total throughput rate remains unchanged, meaning we're not loading this arm on the right-hand side further, right? We're not giving it more work to do. We're simply creating variability in the arrivals of the work, and this alone is enough to cause the buildup. Now notice this is just a video about variability in inter-arrivals. Unfortunately, this game doesn't have a simple way to discuss variability in services, but that would play a similar role.